So hello and welcome to another Valorant tips and tricks video. Today we're going to be talking about Sage on Icebox and how you can use your wall to the best of your abilities. And we're going to start off by watching this pro game match between Fnatic and Cloud9, where we can look how they use the Sage wall and how I think you should be using it as well. So let's take a look at this clip. So we've got Fnatic are on defense and Cloud9 are on attack, and we've got this Killjoy ultimate here. As you can see, we've had a Viper pit put on the spike near A, but the Vipers had to retreat. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, they have to step back. Mitch might be in trouble. Mitch, get away! No, he's dropped. He's caught, but there's nobody pushing forward. He may be okay for time being, but Doma's gonna stick it. He's gonna stick it. He's gonna take it all.
So what we saw there was a player get, caught in the lockdown. We saw the Viper going for the mollies. We saw this Sova on the flank up here, and we just saw Fnatic defuse, and they were able to do that because of the Sage wall. If we go back here a bit, we can see that Doma here, just has the wall. And I'm not sure if you can just about hear that. I'll play it for you one more time. But you can actually hear, I think what we're hearing here is the molly from the Viper bounce off the wall. It actually does end up hitting Doma a bit, but I think it only just catches him. And I actually think that this messed up the lineup somewhat, that gave Doma even more time than, perhaps Vanity, who was playing Viper there, expected him to have. If we go back and just listen, I think you can hear this molly bounce off the wall.
He's dropped. He's caught, but there's nobody pushing forward. He may be okay for time being, but Doma's gonna stick it.
Just there, it just makes that multiple sound of it bouncing. So I think what happened there is it bounced off the wall, bounced somewhere else, and then eventually it does come and just start to hurt Doma a bit, who was on 50 health anyway. So it's only just catching him, and he obviously is able to stick the defuse. And if I was you, this is how I would be using your Sage wall. I think that this is the best use of a Sage wall that you can have. Is that whenever the spike is planted on either site, really, and we saw in that game in particular, Fnatic v Cloud9, we saw it a lot where they would just use this Sage wall for a defuse, just wall themselves in by the spike and just stick it, because it just causes so many problems for the attackers. And you will get a lot more out of this than the typical use of a Sage wall. And I know that most of you are thinking, well, normally I just wall tube. What's wrong with this wall in tube? And there's nothing really wrong with this wall, so to speak. It's actually a very effective wall. It's perhaps the most effective wall in the game at walling off one particular area, because you have to destroy so much of the wall to be able to get past it. And that's going to take a long time. And so it pretty much blocks attackers from ever being able to go tube whilst the Sage wall is up. My problem with that, though, and I think pro teams would probably agree with me, is that attacking tube anyway with more than one person, normally if you're attacking tube, it's just a death trap most of the time. The really only effective way you can use tube is for one person to try and lurk up and, find a kill or two going up there. That is pretty much the only use of tube you will ever get that is successful for the attackers, because this is a very narrow corridor that leads into a pretty narrow space itself. And the thing is, if you get turned back at any point, if, you are losing a gunfight or whatever and you have to run back, well, guess what? There isn't a great place to run back to, because you're in this long corridor again where, the only escape is come all the way back around and then into a crosshair maybe of a defender again from the top of boiler here. And you can be spammed through the tube, and this is just a horrible position to be in where you'll feel stuck a lot of the time. And that's the problem with going up tube, is you're kind of forced to push through. There is no going back. Once you are here, you are going. And, if there's two people pushing you and there's two people peeking you from different angles, tough luck, because going back is just a death trap either way. So you kind of have to go. And that's just the problem with attacking tube. And that's why this wall on tube, whilst yes, it might look very effective, actually doesn't do that much, because the amount of times you will lose a round because someone snuck through tube on you is actually going to be quite rare. And if you are super worried about that anyway, well, a smart attacking team, if they do have some master of the tube who's going into kitchen and knows exactly what they're doing, well, they'll just tell their team to wait for the Sage wall to break. It doesn't last the whole round. It will break, fairly early on, actually, into the round if a team is patient. And they'll have plenty enough time to be able to walk up tube on you afterwards anyway. So I wouldn't even consider this a good wall. Whereas if you use it for a retake and retake with this wall, well, then the wall isn't going to break through time, because ideally you're going to defuse the spike, and it will cause panic for the attackers. It might ruin quite a few lineups as well for many Viper players, and you will be able to defuse a spike in a lot of times and just win rounds based off one bit of utility. So I'm sure that most of you understand that and can agree with me, but you're probably wondering, well, how do I defend tube then? Because I don't want it to become, a problem. I want to understand what's going on in that area. What would be the most effective way for me or my team to defend it? Well, I've got basically a meta comp down here, and Chamber obviously wasn't really seen in Champions, wasn't allowed to be picked in Champions, so this was the normal meta comp here with a Jet, a Viper, a Sova, a Reyna, and a Sage. And obviously you won't be playing meta all the time, but I do expect Reyna to be replaced by Chamber for a lot of different reasons. I think Chamber is just overall an upgrade over Reyna. And so I think that with Chamber, what he will give you is a trademark, and I think that this is what you should go for instead. It's likely that you will run into quite a few Chambers now, because obviously it's the new character that people want to play and they want to learn. And if you are a Chamber as well, and this is quite useful for you, I would always be putting a trademark in Kitchen, as again, this is going to be really effective for you, because not many people are going to push tube either way. Whether you have a wall there, whether you have this there, it's not going to happen often. I'll guarantee you that, and I'm sure that you all can sort of figure that out after playing Icebox just a couple times. So it's not going to happen often, but this bit of utility will just tell you anytime that someone actually has made that push all the way into Kitchen, and you'll have that information and you'll know, and you can play around it from there, because that's all you really need. You don't need to stop the push with a Sage wall necessarily, you just need to know that someone is there, and that's what the trademark will do. And of course that will also slow them down pushing any further on you, and so you'll be able and have time to react. And so that is my advice. And I know that can be very alluring to use your wall as soon as possible and get there, and stop any pushes. And sometimes you might want to, if you are stuck on one of the sites and you know that there's like a 4 full person rush at you, maybe even 5 people, then sure, you can use your wall. I'm not going to say always you have to use it for a retake, but I think in general you should be thinking of your wall as a great retake tool that if you can use and get used to using it in a retake scenario, it will just win you a lot of rounds. Attackers will panic in that situation. Do I destroy the wall? Do I try and run around it? That will happen often, and I think if you have these two characters in combination, then this will just be a much better setup where you have the Chamber trademark in Kitchen, in tube, and you don't have to worry about it too much, because as I say, teams won't push tube that often on you, so you don't have to worry about it. You'll get this information, and you can use your wall, which is perhaps one of the best bit of utilities in the game when used correctly, to be used in its most appropriate way and win you some rounds.